What's up, everyone? Welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Video Game Fight School channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. So many of you by now have already seen James Gunn's presentation regarding the DC universe and going forward, and a few items regarding video games and movies and animated series, but he didn't necessarily mention too much about video games. And I wanted to go ahead and mention today my thoughts on this entire situation, because I'm sure many of you have your own opinions, and there are a lot of opinions already out there. In fact, there's an opinion that I thought about, and one of the developers that's pretty much worked closely with some of these IPs somewhat voiced a sentiment, even though they got kind of ratioed online. I'm going to go ahead and show their comment, and please don't go and bother anybody. But this person here says, James Gunn just stated that DC wants the film, games, and animation characters to be consistent and played by the same actors, which is something he did mention. And he said, I'll never work on a DC title ever again if that's upheld. You've lost your mind if you think Hollywood can outdo Tyler Strong's, Harley, or any voice actor. Now, there are valid concerns within this statement, even though James did mention that there are going to be exceptions and so on and so forth. It is quite interesting that he said that. And I thought to myself, in fact, I was telling my wife, I was like, man, anybody that lands any roles at this point is going to eat. But then I realized, I said, what about the voice actors? I was like, oh no, that means that they're probably going to be out of work if they enforce something like this. But I think that's not necessarily going to be the biggest issue that we have here. I think we're going to be seeing a lot of Elseworld stuff that maybe the old fans will probably still enjoy, and Warner Brothers seems like they're going to support the production of those things in order as not to alienate the fans. So I see that as a monetary reason for them to keep these Elseworld IPs, video games, comic books, and so on and so forth, because Matt Reeves' Batman is staying. It's not going anywhere. It's shown that it could be successful. So why are these other IPs going to be, neglected in that sense? So I think there's room for nuance in this conversation and waiting to see what happens. In regard to the video game side of things, I want to go ahead and say that this is actually a good thing, because even though they reset the Arkhamverse, or they reset the Arkham universe, I think what happens is this is actually going to go back and give the opportunity for us to be able to see some really cool IPs under the DC banner make their way into the video game side of things. For the longest time, DC has relied on very few superheroes and has refused to make an obviously good superhero game, unlike what we have here with Kill the Justice League. Folks, I can't help myself, man, but argue and complain that Superman should have had its own video game in place of Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League. There are a lot of DC fans that would, agree with this, and I'm sure somebody would say, well, I like the Suicide Squad characters, but why not make their own game? Why pit them against the Justice League, who are well beloved? But now that, we've started to see James Gunn's ideas and the Green Lantern show and all of these things that are coming, I think it really does open the door and lay the groundwork for having us get these new video games that we now know that his vision is not against pursuing on the gaming side. He seems a little bit more open-minded, and so we're probably not going to get executives canceling Damian Wayne games. Imagine that. Now we have a movie. The new Batman is going to be rebooting with, Grant Morrison's representation of Batman, and, pretty much following something along the storyline where, it's featured with him and his son Damian. And so somehow, somewhere, I think you have somebody who is actually much more interested in giving fans what it is that they want, rather than executives that we've had in the past that have been, for the most part, very, very notorious for making some really asinine decisions. So I think overall there are some highlights to this, and in seeing the way that the community should not be alienated, I think James is going to make the right balance of decisions. And while he's going ahead and getting his dream and vision of this reboot going on, they're going to realize that there's financial incentive to merge everything together in terms of the portfolio. I'm not saying in terms of the storyline. The storyline, they're going to reboot stuff and merge some old stuff into the new stuff. And at the end of the day, they're going to eventually start something new. But why not keep all the fans happy? Because at the end of the day, it actually does, recalculate itself to sales and financial success. So this is pretty much my own position so far, because I think there's room now for, more creativity. But here's another challenge too, ladies and gentlemen. As much as we want this to be great and everything, I think Warner and their, video game development strategies are going to be basically the bane of their existence. And I say this because you have somebody who's leading the charge. acknowledge that their job is just all about profitability. So you can't really argue against what it is that they're doing. That's number one. That's the person in charge of the 11 games development studios. Number two, there are only 11 development studios that are at work with these IPs, and they're all under the Warner banner. And unless Warner is willing to go ahead and start to license some of their IPs out, we're still going to have some stagnation nonetheless. We'll be depending on Wonder Woman, maybe what Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is going to bring, maybe a reboot, and then possibly what Warner Brothers Montreal is working on, because it seems like their second game has more than likely been greenlit at this point. But I'll leave this conversation here. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment section. And yeah, let me know, because all of this is very relevant to the fans as of now. And I'm sure many of you are probably thinking in your minds how this is eventually going to get fleshed out. So talk to me, and I'll talk to you in another one. Hopefully, peace out.